The void of space held many dangers, but none as feared as the void vultures. Captain Krelix paced the bridge of his warship, the blood mark, his 4 arms clasped behind his back as he examined the holographic display of their target. The research outpost hung in space like a fragile ornament, seemingly defenseless and ripe for plunder. "This will be an easy job," Krelix said, his voice a low rumble that reverberated through his exoskeleton. His crew, a collection of the most hardened mercenaries and killers in the sector, nodded in agreement. They had built their reputation on efficiency and brutality, taking what they wanted and leaving nothing but destruction in their wake. "The corporate security is minimal," continued Razak, Krelix's second-in-command. The hulking Draxian pulled up additional data on the display. "Their weapons systems are outdated, and the garrison consists of only 20 guards, most of them inexperienced." Krelix's mandibles clicked together in what passed for a smile among his species. "Perfect. The biotech research they're conducting there will fetch a high price on the black market. We go in, neutralize any resistance, take what we need, and disappear before any reinforcements arrive." Talia, their intelligence specialist, cleared her throat. "Captain, there have been some reports from nearby sectors. Strange ships with unfamiliar configurations. Some are saying they might be human vessels." The bridge fell silent. Humans. Deathworlders. The word alone was enough to make even hardened veterans uncomfortable. Krelix waved a dismissive hand. "Rumors and superstition. Humans stay in their own territories. Even if they were here, what would a single ship do against us? We've taken on military cruisers and won." "But Captain," Talia persisted, "the stories say—" "Enough." Krelix slammed his fist down. "I don't pay you to spread ghost stories. Prepare for the operation. We strike in 6 hours." As the crew dispersed to their stations, Krelix remained on the bridge, gazing at the holographic image of the outpost. Despite his outward confidence, something about Talia's words had unsettled him. Humans were an anomaly in the galactic community, a species that had evolved on a planet with environmental conditions so harsh that most spacefaring species would consider it unsurvivable. A death world. Their biology, psychology, and technology reflected their brutal origins in ways that made them unpredictable and dangerous. But dangerous or not, Krelix reminded himself, they were just another species. And the void vultures feared nothing. Zorp leaned back in his chair, staring at the monitoring screens with undisguised boredom. Being a security guard at the Helix Corporation's remote research outpost was possibly the most tedious job in the galaxy. The young Xyler had been stationed here for 3 standard months, and nothing remotely interesting had happened. His superior, security officer Mock, appeared behind him. "Anything on the scanners, Zorp?" "Same as yesterday, and the day before, and the day before that," Zorp replied, not bothering to hide his disinterest. "Literally nothing happens here, sir. Why do we even need security? We're in the middle of nowhere." Mock's expression hardened. "That nowhere is exactly why we need security. Remote locations attract trouble. Pirates, mercenaries, smugglers, they all look for isolated targets." Zorp rolled his eyes when Mock turned away. The older Xyler was always spouting the same warnings, but Zorp had yet to see any evidence that they were in danger. The outpost conducted some kind of biological research, something about adapting organisms to extreme environments, but it hardly seemed like the kind of valuable work that would attract unwanted attention. As his shift neared its end, Zorp's attention was caught by snippets of conversation from 2 researchers walking past his station. Another ship disappeared near the Cygnus Rift, one was saying. "Third one this month. They're saying it might be humans," the other replied, voice lowered, "expanding their territory. Humans." The first researcher sounded skeptical. "This far from Earth space? Why not? They're unpredictable. That's what makes them so dangerous." Their voices faded as they moved down the corridor, leaving Zorp with an unfamiliar feeling of unease. He had heard stories about humans, of course. Everyone had. The species that had evolved on a planet with crushing gravity, extreme temperature variations, and an atmosphere filled with corrosive oxygen. a species that could endure physical traumas that would kill most other sentient beings, that could go days without sleep, that could adapt to almost any environment. Deathworlders. Zorp shook his head, dismissing the thought. Just stories exaggerated in the telling. Even if humans were operating in nearby sectors, they were unlikely to take any interest in a small corporate research outpost. With that comforting thought, he finished his shift and headed to the mess hall, the conversation already fading from his mind. Commander Theron, head of the research outpost, was reviewing the monthly progress reports when his communication console chimed. Incoming transmission from security announced the automated system. "Put it through," Theron said, setting aside his work. Security Officer Mock's face appeared on the screen. "Commander, long-range scanners have detected an unidentified vessel approaching our position. Signature suggests it's heavily armed." Theron frowned. "Pirates? Possibly. They're maintaining communication silence and approaching on a vector that suggests they're trying to avoid detection. Alert all personnel and activate defensive protocols," Theron ordered. "I want a full security team ready in case they attempt to board." "Yes, Commander." The connection closed, and Theron leaned back in his chair, mind racing. The outpost defenses were minimal, designed to deter casual threats rather than a determined attack. If they were facing professional mercenaries or pirates, they would be drastically outgunned. His console chimed again. "Another vessel detected," reported the automated system. "Smaller craft. Unknown configuration." On screen, Theron commanded. The display showed a sleek ship unlike any Theron had seen before. It was compact with smooth lines and no obvious weapons emplacements, though something about its design suggested it was far more formidable than it appeared. "Incoming transmission from the second vessel," announced the system. "Accept," Theron said, curiosity overriding caution. The screen shifted to show the interior of ship's bridge. The being looking back at Theron had no scales, no exoskeleton, no fur, just smooth skin covering a bipedal form. Its features were arranged in a configuration that was both alien and strangely familiar. A human. "Greetings," said the human, its voice unexpectedly melodious. "This is Captain Eva Rostova of the exploration vessel Wanderer. We've detected unusual activity in this sector and observed an armed vessel approaching your position. We believe you may be in danger." Theron struggled to maintain his composure. "This is Commander Theron of Helix Corporation Research Outpost 7. We've detected the vessel as well and are preparing our defenses." Captain Rostova nodded. "We're monitoring the situation and can offer assistance if needed. The approaching ship matches the signature of a known criminal group, the Void Vultures. They're dangerous mercenaries, Commander." Theron felt his scales tighten against his body, an involuntary response to fear among his species. The Void Vultures were infamous, known for leaving no survivors. "Why would you help us?" he asked, suspicion overriding his fear. Rostova's expression shifted in a way Theron couldn't interpret. "Let's just say we take an interest in maintaining peace in this region. We're currently investigating several disappearances in nearby sectors." Before Theron could respond, Mock's voice came through the intercom. "Commander, the unidentified vessel has increased speed and deployed weapon systems. They're dropping their stealth protocols and coming in fast." Theron looked back at the human. "It seems we'll need that assistance after all, Captain." Rostova nodded. "Stand by, Commander. We'll handle this." The transmission ended, leaving Theron to wonder if he had just made a terrible mistake by trusting a Deathworlder. Zorp was back at his station, all traces of boredom gone as alarm klaxons blared throughout the outpost. The main security screen showed a large, menacing vessel rapidly approaching their position. "All security personnel to battle stations." Mock's voice commanded over the intercom. "This is not a drill." Next to the approaching hostile ship, Zorp could see a smaller vessel moving with unexpected speed and grace. As he watched, the smaller ship accelerated, positioning itself between the outpost and the attacker. "What the hell is that?" asked Nilks, another guard who had rushed to the monitoring station. "I don't know," Zorp replied, "but Commander Theron just sent orders to hold fire on the smaller vessel. Apparently, they're here to help." "Help?" who would risk their lives for a corporate outpost in the middle of nowhere. Before Zorp could respond, the communications system crackled to life with an incoming transmission from the hostile ship. The screen filled with the image of a heavily armored Thraxian, his exoskeleton adorned with battle trophies. "This is Captain Krelix of the Void Vultures," the mercenary announced, his voice cold and confident. "Your outpost is now under our control. Deactivate your defenses and prepare to be boarded. Resist, and we will destroy you." Commander Theron's voice responded over the outpost channel. "This is Commander Theron. We refuse your demands, Krelix. This outpost is under the protection of Helix Corporation and—" Krelix's harsh laughter cut off Theron's response. "Corporate protection? There are no corporate ships within light years of this position. You're alone, Commander. Make this easy on yourself." As if to emphasize his point, the Bloodmark fired a warning shot that passed perilously close to the outpost, causing the entire structure to shudder. "Sir," Nilks exclaimed, pointing at another screen. "The small ship is moving." Zorp watched in astonishment as the unidentified vessel accelerated toward the Bloodmark with impossible speed, moving in a trajectory that defied conventional space navigation. It was as if the pilot was ignoring or manipulating the laws of physics themselves. On the command channel, a new voice spoke, calm, controlled, and somehow more terrifying for its lack of emotion. "Void Vulture's vessel. This is Captain Eva Rostova of the Wanderer. Cease your aggression immediately and withdraw from this system, or we will be forced to take action." For a moment, there was silence. Then Krelix responded, his tone mocking. "A pleasure craft dares to threaten the Void Vultures? Your bravery is amusing, but misplaced. Leave now, and we might let you live." "This is your final warning," Rostova replied, her voice unchanged. Krelix's response was to fire a full barrage of missiles at the tiny ship. Zorp held his breath, expecting to see the Wanderer obliterated. Instead, something impossible happened. The small ship moved with inhuman precision, evading most of the missiles as if they were moving in slow motion. Those that came too close were intercepted by pinpoint laser fire that seemed to originate from invisible weapon ports on the Wanderer's hull. Not a single missile hit. Then the Wanderer struck back. There was no massive barrage, no overwhelming firepower, just a single, precisely targeted electromagnetic pulse that washed over the Bloodmark. Instantly, half the mercenary ship's external systems went dark. "What just happened?" Nilks whispered. Zorp shook his head, unable to tear his eyes from the display. I think that's a human ship." On the command channel, they could hear chaos erupting on the Bloodmark's bridge. "Weapons systems malfunctioning," someone was shouting. "Navigation compromised. They've somehow bypassed our primary shields." "Impossible," Krelix roared. "How can one ship?" He fell silent as realization dawned. When he spoke again, his voice had lost all its arrogance. "Deathworlders," he said, almost too quietly to hear. The Wanderer struck again, another precise attack that disabled the Bloodmark's main engines. The mercenary vessel began to drift, still capable of maneuvering but unable to escape. Krelix's voice returned, now urgent and filled with an emotion Zorp had never expected to hear from the notorious pirate: fear. "All units, abort mission. I repeat, abort mission. Emergency protocols, disengage immediately. All power to secondary engines and emergency jump systems." The Bloodmark began a clumsy retreat, auxiliary engines flaring as it turned away from the outpost. The Wanderer pursued, easily keeping pace with the larger vessel. "They're running away," Nilks said incredulously. "The Void Vultures are actually running away?" Zorp could hardly believe it himself. The most feared mercenary group in the sector, veterans of countless raids and battles, were fleeing in terror from a single human ship. As they watched, the Wanderer continued its pursuit, herding the Bloodmark away from the outpost and deeper into space. Before long, both ships had disappeared from their sensors, leaving the outpost in stunned silence. Commander Theron's voice came over the intercom. "All personnel, remain at alert status. We don't know if the immediate threat has passed, but we should prepare for any contingency. Zorp exchanged looks with Nilks. What just happened? The other guard asked. I think, Zorp replied slowly, we just saw why people are afraid of humans. The blood mark limped through space, its proud silhouette now marred by damaged sections and flickering systems. On the bridge, Captain Krelix was no longer the confident commander, but a desperate fugitive. Status report, he demanded, his voice cracking with stress. Main engines still offline, Razak reported. Operating on auxiliary power only. Weapons systems at 30% capacity. Long-range communications damaged. What about the jump drive? Technicians are attempting to bring it online, but the system keeps failing. It's as if... Razak hesitated. As if what? Krelix snapped. As if something is interfering with it. Like they've somehow infected our systems with some kind of virus or countermeasure. Krelix slammed his fist against the console. Impossible. Our cybersecurity is state-of-the-art. No one could hack our systems that quickly. With respect, Captain, Talia interjected, we're not dealing with just anyone. We're dealing with humans. The bridge fell silent at her words. Krelix wanted to rebuke her for spreading fear, but the evidence was undeniable. They had been completely outmatched by a ship a fraction of their size. Options, he finally asked, his voice quieter now. The Noctis Nebula is 2 parsecs away, Razak suggested. If we can reach it, the radiation and dust might confuse their sensors long enough for us to make repairs. The asteroid field in the Tycho system is closer, Talia countered. We could use the larger bodies for cover. Krelix nodded. Set course for the asteroid field. Maximum speed on auxiliary engines. The blood mark altered course, limping toward the distant safety of the Tycho system. For several tense minutes, it seemed they might escape. The human vessel had fallen behind, no longer visible on their damaged sensors. Have we lost them? Krelix asked, hope creeping into his voice. The ship's alarms suddenly blared to life. Contact, cried the sensor operator. They're back on our tail, and gaining rapidly. Impossible. Krelix hissed. No ship that size should be able to match our speed, even on auxiliary power. But the evidence was on the display. The Wanderer was indeed gaining on them, moving with that same uncanny precision that defied conventional spaceflight physics. Emergency maneuvers, Krelix ordered. Random pattern. Make us unpredictable. The blood mark began to juke and weave, its movements erratic and desperate. But for every evasive action they took, the Wanderer seemed to anticipate their move, adjusting its own course with impossible accuracy. It's like they know what we're going to do before we do it, Razak said, his voice filled with growing dread. The asteroid field is ahead, the navigator announced. Entering in 30 seconds. Krelix leaned forward. Once we're in the field, use the largest asteroids for cover. We'll find somewhere to hide, make emergency repairs, and then... His words died as the ship's systems suddenly went completely dark, then rebooted a moment later in emergency mode. What happened? He demanded. Some kind of targeted electromagnetic pulse, the systems officer replied, frantically working at his console. But far more sophisticated than anything I've ever seen. It penetrated our shields like they weren't even there. Asteroid field in 5 seconds, the navigator called out. The blood mark plunged into the chaotic jumble of spinning rocks, its auxiliary engines straining as it wove between the dangerous obstacles. Krelix felt a glimmer of hope. Surely even the humans would have to slow down in this treacherous environment. That hope was short-lived. The Wanderer entered the field behind them, but instead of cautiously navigating the obstacles, it moved through them with the same fluid grace it had shown in open space. It was as if the human pilot could see a clear path through the chaos where none should exist. How are they doing that? Razak whispered, watching the tactical display with mounting horror. Before anyone could respond, the ship's alarms blared again. They're targeting us, the weapons officer shouted. Krelix braced himself for destruction, but what came instead was worse. A precisely aimed shot from the Wanderer struck the blood mark's auxiliary engines, disabling them without causing a catastrophic breach. The mercenary vessel began to drift helplessly among the asteroids, all propulsion now gone. Silence fell over the bridge as reality sank in. They were trapped. The communications system crackled to life, and Captain Rostova's calm voice filled the bridge. Void Vulture's vessel, your ship has been disabled. Your options are now limited to surrender or a very long wait for rescue in a hazardous asteroid field. I suggest you choose the former. Krelix stared at the communications panel, defeat washing over him. How? He asked, not even caring if the human could hear the desperation in his voice. How did you do this to us? There was a brief pause before Rostova responded. We simply used your expected behaviors against you, Captain. Predictable aggression is vulnerability in disguise. Krelix's mandibles clicked together in confusion. You knew we would run to the asteroid field? We analyzed your previous rating patterns, Rostova explained, her tone almost academic. You've used dense environments for cover in 78% of your retreats. The asteroid field was statistically your most likely choice, so we prepared countermeasures specifically for this scenario. The mercenary captain felt a chill run through his exoskeleton. They had studied him, predicted him, turned his own tactics against him with ruthless efficiency. Why not just destroy us? He asked finally. Why this? Humiliation? Another pause. Destruction is inefficient and wasteful, Captain Krelix. Justice serves a greater purpose than vengeance. With those words, Rostova ended the transmission, leaving Krelix to contemplate how. Completely his understanding of the galaxy had been shattered. Back at the research outpost, Zorp was helping the engineering team repair minor damage caused by the Bloodmark's warning shot when a small shuttle docked at the main airlock. Commander Theron had informed all personnel that representatives from the Wanderer would be arriving to assist with repairs and security upgrades. The airlock cycled open, and Zorp found himself face to face with humans for the first time. There were 3 of them, 2 males and 1 female, each wearing simple, functional uniforms with an insignia Zorp didn't recognize. What struck him immediately was how normal they looked. Based on the stories, he had expected towering monsters with bulging muscles and aggressive postures. Instead, the humans appeared almost fragile compared to many species he had encountered. Hello, said the female human, offering a gesture that Zorp recognized as a greeting. I'm Lieutenant Sarachen. These are engineers Malik and Dorsey. Captain Rostova sent us to help with your repairs. Zorp, he replied, still staring. Security? I'm from security. Lieutenant Chun smiled, an expression that Zorp found oddly reassuring despite his nervousness. Nice to meet you, Zorp. Could you direct us to your engineering section? We brought some specialized equipment that might help speed things along. Of course, Zorp said, gesturing for them to follow. This way. Our main environmental system took some damage during the attack. As they walked, Zorp found himself stealing glances at the humans. They moved with a fluid efficiency that seemed at odds with their apparently fragile physiology. And despite their role in the recent combat, they carried themselves with a relaxed alertness rather than the aggressive vigilance he would have expected from warriors. The engineering section was in disarray, with technicians working frantically to repair the damage to the environmental control system. The chief engineer, a Melosian named Vix, looked up as they entered. So these are our saviors, Vix said, his tone somewhere between gratitude and suspicion. We've got the main air filtration system offline. Backup systems are handling it for now, but they're not designed for long-term operation. Engineer Malik stepped forward, examining the damaged system with obvious interest. Ah, a Helix 9 environmental processor. We're familiar with this model. Have you tried bypassing the tertiary flow regulator to establish a direct connection between the primary filter and the distribution network? Vix's expression shifted to surprise. That would circumvent the safety interlocks. The system would run hot without proper flow control. True, agreed Engineer Dorsey, joining his colleague. But you could compensate by reducing the input pressure here and here. He pointed to specific components on the system diagram. It's a temporary fix, but it would get your main system back online while we work on a proper repair. Vix looked skeptical but desperate enough to try anything. Show me. As the engineers worked, Zorp found himself standing next to Lieutenant Shun. watching in fascination as the humans collaborated with the outpost's technical team. Their approach was unorthodox, but undeniably effective. Your engineers seem to know our systems well, Zorp observed. Chun smiled. Humans tend to be quick studies, and we've encountered similar technology before. Is that how you defeated the Void Vultures so easily? By studying their technology? The lieutenant's expression grew more serious. We studied their behavior more than their technology. Understanding how others think, their patterns, their motivations, their limitations, that's often more valuable than any weapon system. Zorp considered this. But the way your ship moved, it didn't seem possible. Many things seem impossible until someone does them, Chen replied. Our history on Earth taught us that limitations are often self-imposed. Zorp wanted to ask more, but at that moment, Engineer Malik let out a triumphant exclamation. There, try it now. Vix activated the system, and to his obvious amazement, the environmental controls came back online. How did you? That shouldn't have worked. Sometimes the obvious solution isn't the best one, Malik said with a shrug. You just need to look at the problem from a different angle. As the repairs continued, Zorp found himself drawn into conversation with the humans, his initial fear gradually giving way to fascination. They spoke of Earth and its many environments, of the challenges their species had faced in its evolution, and of their approach to space exploration. What emerged was a picture not of mindless warriors, but of adaptable problem solvers, beings who had survived a harsh world by developing not just physical resilience, but intellectual flexibility and social cooperation. Why did you help us? Zorp asked Chun as their work neared completion. You could have just let the Void Vultures attack. It wasn't your fight. Chun considered the question. We believe that capability comes with responsibility. We have the ability to help, so we do. It's as simple as that. Even though we're strangers, even though there was risk to yourselves, especially then, Chen replied. The true measure of principles is whether you apply them even when it's difficult or dangerous. Before Zorp could respond, his communicator beeped with an incoming message from Commander Theron. The Wanderer has returned, Theron announced to all personnel. They've apprehended the Void Vultures and are transferring them to our custody. Chen smiled at the news. Right on schedule. Shall we head to the docking bay to meet them? The docking bay was crowded with outpost personnel eager to see the notorious pirates who had so nearly been their doom. Captain Rostova entered first, followed by her security team, escorting the captured mercenaries. Krelix, now in restraints, looked diminished somehow, his once imposing presence reduced to that of a common criminal. Commander Theron stepped forward to greet Rostova. Captain, on behalf of all personnel at this outpost, I thank you for your timely intervention. Without your help, we would likely not have survived. Rostova nodded. We're glad we could be of assistance, Commander. We've contacted Galactic Security Forces, and they'll be sending a ship to take custody of these prisoners. They should arrive within 2 standard days. Krelix, who had been staring at the floor, suddenly looked up at Rostova. I don't understand, he said, his voice barely audible. You could have destroyed us. Your weapons were more than capable. Why didn't you? Rostova turned to face the mercenary captain. Because that's not who we are, Krelix. Contrary to the stories you might have heard, humans don't kill when there are alternatives. We're not the monsters you seem to think we are. But you're Deathworlders, Krelix insisted, confusion evident in his posture. You evolved to kill to conquer. It's your nature. No, Rostova corrected him gently. We evolved to survive. There's a difference. Yes, Earth is a harsh planet by your standards. Yes, that harshness shaped us, made us adaptable, resourceful, and yes, sometimes dangerous. But it also taught us the value of cooperation, of community, of finding solutions beyond mere violence. I've spent my life believing that the galaxy rewards the strongest, Krelix said, mandibles clicking in agitation. That power is the only true currency. And how has that belief served you? Rostova asked. Here you stand, defeated not by superior strength, but by superior understanding. We didn't just outfight you, Krelix. We outthought you. The mercenary had no response to that, and the security team led him and his crew away to the outpost detention area. As they departed, Zorp noticed the other outpost personnel staring at the humans with a mixture of awe and uncertainty. The stories they had heard all their lives didn't match the reality before them. Later, as the Wanderer prepared to depart, Zorp found himself at the main airlock again, this time to bid farewell to Lieutenant Shun and the engineers. "Where will you go now?" he asked Shun. "We'll continue our survey mission," she replied. "There are reports of other unusual activities in nearby sectors that we need to investigate." "More pirates?" Chen's expression turned serious. "We don't know yet, but whatever it is, we'll handle it." Zorp hesitated, then asked the question that had been bothering him since the attack. "The Void Vultures were the most feared mercenary group in this sector. They've never been defeated before, let alone captured. And they ran from you. They were absolutely terrified. Why? What is it about humans that frightens even killers like them?" Chen considered for a moment before answering. "I think what frightens them isn't our strength or our technology, but our unpredictability. Species like the Thraxians understand violence and power. They respect it, they use it, they live by it. What they don't understand is empathy, cooperation, self-sacrifice. The idea that we might risk ourselves for strangers, that we might show mercy to defeated enemies, that we follow principles that sometimes override immediate self-interest. These concepts are alien to them in a way our biology could never be." She gestured toward the detained mercenaries. "Look at Krelix. He's not just afraid of what we might do to him. He's afraid because we've shown him that his entire worldview, his understanding of how the universe works, is fundamentally flawed. We're not just threatening his life, we're threatening his reality." Zorp thought about this as the human team boarded their shuttle. Chen was right, he realized. The true power of humans wasn't their physical capabilities or their advanced technology. It was their ability to change the rules of the game, to introduce new variables into what had seemed like a fixed equation. In a galaxy where most species followed predictable patterns based on their evolutionary history, humans were a wild card, capable of violence, yes, but also of compassion, driven by self-interest, but also by abstract ideals, formidable as enemies, but even more valuable as allies. As the Wanderer departed, news of the Void Vulture's capture spread rapidly through local communication networks. The story grew with each telling. How a single human ship had defeated the notorious pirates, how the humans had repaired the damaged outpost, how they had treated even their enemies with a strange combination of efficiency and mercy. Zorp found himself becoming something of a local celebrity, bombarded with questions about the humans from fascinated colleagues and visitors. He answered as best he could, but he knew that words couldn't fully capture what he had witnessed. The galaxy was changing. The emergence of humans from their death world had introduced something new into the cosmic order. Not just another predator species, but a force for uncertainty and change. And in that moment, watching the Wanderer disappear into the vastness of space, Zorp understood why even the most hardened killers ran when Deathworlders arrived. It wasn't fear of death that drove them to flee. It was fear of the unknown. Fear of a species that couldn't be easily categorized or predicted, a species whose greatest weapon wasn't their strength or their technology, but their capacity to imagine and create new possibilities. In a universe of fixed patterns and ancient equilibria, humans were a reminder that nothing was truly permanent, that even the oldest and most established orders could be disrupted by a new perspective. And that realization was more terrifying to beings like Krelix than any weapon could ever be.